Yes guys, what's up? Welcome back to my homemade jet ski build, part 2, the mask. Now if you're new to this project, I'm building a homemade jet ski completely from scratch. So previously I've been working it all out in a CAD model, and in part 1 I've already made the hull. If you haven't seen it, make sure to check it out, because it turned out pretty good. Now to build this jet ski, I'm following my homemade set of plans, which make it very easy to make it, using only a few basic woodworking tools. And if you're interested, you can find the plans to build your very own mat ski on my website. There are two versions available, the one I'm building with a jet drive and an inboard engine just like a normal jet ski, and the version with an outboard engine, which will be a lot easier to build. Now in the next part I'll be building my very own 200 horsepower plus jet drive for this project, which will later be coupled to a 1200cc superbike engine. But in this part I'm gonna make the top half of the jet ski. To do so I'm using this 1-to-1 big paper templates, which I can simply glue to the plywood to cheaply and quickly cut all the parts I need. The framing will be built from 18mm thick ply, and all the parts designed in such a way that they perfectly slot into each other. There is no measuring needed at all. After the framing is done, I'll cover it in thinner plywood sheeting, and with some fiberglass and paint later we will have a completed jet ski, at least from the outside. So after all these long days of engineering and building this jet ski, I found a good way to relax, playing Hunting Clash. Now as you might know, hunting is a really fun thing to do in real life, but it's pretty expensive and you can't do it anywhere, at any time. But now you can, by simply downloading Hunting Clash using the link in the video description. Hunting Clash is one of the most realistic, free mobile games. As you can see, the graphics are just awesome, it's almost just like the real thing. In this game you can discover many different beautiful locations all over the world, with dozens of wild animals to hunt after. From your typical varmints all the way up to bears, deer and even exotic animals. Best thing is you can upgrade your equipment in this game while you're playing, meaning you get better weapons as you get along. And also you can train your best friend, your hunting dog, to fetch your takes even quicker. Once you've developed your skills and you're able to hunt the most dangerous animals, put them to the test by taking part in 1 vs 1 PvP duels, weekly online competitions and events. So big thanks to Hunting Clash for sponsoring this video, and make sure to support me by downloading the game link in the description or the QR code right here. By using my gift code HOMEMADE-MADNESS you'll get a free starter pack worth $15, 100 gold, 70 skill tokens and 2 mythical cards. To redeem your gift code, just follow those 2 simple steps. So check out the link in the description and the pinned comment and go download this game. So I got the first sheet of 18mm plywood all cut out, which is this one. So next up I'll do this one, which is also 18mm, and then I have all my framing pieces cut and we can begin assembling them. Okay, so I got all my pieces cut, looking pretty good. It's a lot of parts. Took me about 2 hours to make all of this. So next up I can start assembling. And I want to assemble it on the actual hull, just to make sure it fits perfectly. So before I can do that, I need to make the hull stand, so I can put the hull down here and start building. So if you look at the plans, you can find this, the hull stand, but I forgot to add these two parts to the one-to-one printout templates. So to solve it, I printed out this paper with all dimensions on it, and I'll just cut it from some scrap. So then we have the hull stand, we can put the hull on it and start building it up. Okay, so got the hull in place on the stand, looking good. Got all my pieces cut. Let's take a look at the drawings. Here we go. First thing to make, using the parts I just cut, is the framing. So first step is make the outside ring again, just like we did on the hull. And it's supposed to be a bit smaller than this one, to leave a bit of a ledge here. That's the first step. And then everything will fit together pretty much like a puzzle. And this one, this, and then it's starting to look pretty good. So yeah, should all fit together perfectly. Let's see. Okay, front is on, went together real smoothly. And next up I need to focus on the seat bit and basically the rear framing. So as you can see here, it will look something like this. And it's a bit tricky because I need to assemble this separately and then put it in one piece. Yes, looking pretty good. So, framing is all done, went together super smoothly, everything fitted in one go, it's amazing. So last thing I did was add these two strips here, which is where the seat will rest on, and this will remain open. So everything, the engine, jet drive, fuel tank, stuff like that, will be easily accessible. And the seat itself is big enough to easily fit 2 people and I think even 3, so that's good. And I'll make the seat myself in the next episode. But for now, let's cover this thing up with sheeting. So what I'll start off with is the flooring, which is 9mm thick. Put the paper on there and cut my pieces. Okay, so got my 9mm sheet cut and put in place. It's the flooring, looking pretty good. And you can really see how it curves down about this much below this surface, just to get it all a bit lower, just like you would see on a regular jet ski. And now I'm going to cut these 3 sheets of 5mm thickness and put them on here. Okay, so first pieces are on, nice and curvy. Now there is a slight gap here, which can be perfectly filled with the polyester fiber Bondo. So it's all looking pretty good, it's going nice and quickly, and now I'll do the rest of it. Okay, so quite a lot of filling and sanding later, and I'm really impressed with this fiberglass fiber filler stuff. Just really easy to work with, dries quickly, sands easily, and very strong. So it took quite a lot of sanding and filling to get it all nice and smooth, especially around these parts, because this part bends like this and a little bit like this too, to make room for your knee. So quite a lot of work later, but it's now ready for fiberglassing. So I'm gonna put just one layer on here and maybe use 2 layers for the floor because it's already very strong. And then after the fiberglassing, I can sand it again and put it in the primer, and then we have the top. Okay, a lot of sanding later to get it all nice and smooth. And now it's ready for the primer, so I'm gonna put the epoxy primer on here. I'll put on one coat first to get it all just nice and sealed, and then later I'll paint it in the final color. So once I got the primer on there, I can put it back on the hull and see how it looks. Okay, so next day, and the paint is dry. Very nice. So what I want to do next is flip it around and work on the inside. I'm just gonna clean it up a little bit, sand it down maybe, and then just cover it in the polyester resin without the fiberglass. And the resin will just make it very strong and waterproof. Okay, so we just finished putting on first coat of polyester resin on here, and this stuff is really nice. And the best thing about just using the resin to do this is it's really hard and really seals up all the edges of the plywood, just to make sure no water gets on the wood. Also here, where I made these cuts to bed the plywood, the resin really fills up the seams between here, making it strong and smooth. And of course later on I'll paint it all white again to make it look a lot better. But for now I want to see what the top and the bottom combined looks like. So what I'll do is I'll turn this around again, put the hull down here, put the top on there, and then put it in the water. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Hunting Clash for sponsoring this video. So it works pretty good, but of course it floats pretty high at the moment, but it will become much heavier later on. So stay tuned, because next video I'll be building my very own jet drive for this build. Yes, what's up everyone, welcome back to another Homemade Madness video. So, I'm building a completely homemade jet ski from scratch, and in the first 3 videos of this project, I've built the jet ski's hull, top half, and made a homemade jet drive. So make sure to check out these videos if you haven't already, and the next step in this project is to give this jet ski an engine. Now for the engine I've chosen to put in a Superbike engine, because these engines have a lot of power, will rev all the way up to 12,000 RPM, but are still pretty small and lightweight. And also I think an engine like this will make this project much more special. So I do have some experience with using a Superbike engine in a watercraft. I built a 1000cc bike engine in a tiny speedboat back in 2020, and I also made some videos about it. It worked pretty good, but I did learn a lot from the mistakes I made, so this time I'll make it way better. Okay, that's enough talking. Now let's get this bike, take it for a quick test ride, and then tear out the engine, put it in the hull and connect it to the jet drive. So here's the bike, Kawasaki ZZR 1200, super fast, 0 to 60 in 2-3 seconds, top speed 270 km per hour, wheelies in first, second and third gear, and it's by far the fastest bike I've ever ridden. And in its time, this was actually the second fastest production bike in the world, right after, you know it, the Hayabusa, which is of course 1300cc, this is 1200, but it's still plenty fast and it's way cheaper. So 4-in-line engine, water cooled, carburetors, should make around 170-180 horsepower. So next up, well, let's tear it apart. So as you can see, it's actually quite a nice bike, and I'm a bit sorry to tear it apart. There's minimal scratches and it's just, well, looking pretty good. But I got it pretty cheap, and in here is what I want, the engine. So let's tear it out. Okay, so got the engine out, and it's pretty small and compact if you think about what it is. 4 cylinders with a clutch and 6 gears. So here are the 4 carburetors, looking pretty good as well. And this is the original air filter, which went something like this on here. But I don't think it'll fit in there, so I'll have to come up with something else. But I'll figure it out. So next job is to simply put this engine in a jet ski and hook it up to the jet drive. But how I'm going to do that? Well, I have a plan. First of all, I have these engine mounts, which are a bit springy because they have rubber in them. So what I'll do is I'll make a steel frame which mounts to the engine and then mounts to one of these in each corner. And then I can mount these to the foundation in the hull, and then the engine is in place. And then something else I've been getting a lot of questions and comments about, and I've also been thinking about quite a lot myself, is how I'm going to attach this engine to the prop shaft right here. So first thing I could do is remove this plate, and behind here is the crankshaft, and then couple the crankshaft to the shaft. But this engine spins at maximum around 12,000 RPM, and the shaft to spin around 8000 RPM. So that's way too much. And next thing I can do is mount it to the clutch basket, which is around here. And the clutch basket is geared down from here to here by about 1 to 2. So that means even if I could make a special cover to go around here with an oil seal and a shaft coming out here, it would only spin about 6000 RPM, which is, well, again, a bit too slow. So the third option is what I'm going to do. Take the drive sprocket off, make this shaft a bit longer so it comes out around here. And then I'll have a belt and pulley system, taking the power back to the middle and then to the shaft. And then I can change gearing if I want maybe a bit more top speed or a bit more acceleration. And I can also change the gearing of this belt system, which I'll build later. And then I don't have to modify the engine at all. And I can choose the gears. But it will be a bit tricky to make, but I'll figure it out. But first, let's mount this engine in the hull. Okay, so I got the engine in place where it needs to be. It fits nicely. And next up, well, I'm going to mount it. So first thing to do is make a nice solid base to which I can mount the engine. So what I'll do is make two 2x4s which go all the way to the back. And then I'll make a steel frame to mount the engine to. And then the steel frame will sit on these rubber engine mounts, so it can vibrate a little bit on the 2x4s. And once that's done, we'll focus on the driveline. Okay, so I got the engine in on the rubbers. It can wiggle about a little bit, so hopefully I don't have any vibrations in the rest of the jet ski. So that's all good for now. But next up is a tricky thing, connecting this sprocket to this shaft. So what I have to do it is this. This is a drive belt with 2 pulleys, and these pulleys have taper locks in them. So this part is slightly tapered and this inside as well. So as you push this in here by putting bolts in here, it'll clamp around the shaft. And I've turned this one down a little bit so it fits on this shaft. And I'll grind the keyway in here later and put a key in there. The belt will go on here, and the bigger pulley will of course go on this side. And then this is the belt drive setup, and this one is a lot smaller than this one, which of course means this will spin a lot faster. And I have this bearing to go on here and keep this shaft in place. And then I have these 2 bearings which will go on this side and on this side. And of course it's pretty hard to align this shaft perfectly with this one, and also this will shake a little bit because this is on rubbers and this isn't. So to make that possible, I have this drive shaft from a VW Golf, and I'll shorten it a little bit and make a special adapter so this will fit on there. This shaft will go in here, and then we have our drivetrain system. So first I'll make a steel frame to go in here, mount this bearing to it, mount these bearings to it, and make sure they can slide a little bit to tension the belt. And then I'll figure out the drive shaft. Okay, so that's the drive belt done, working pretty good, running smoothly. I can tension it using these slots and move the bearings about a little bit. So next up is to connect this shaft to this sprocket. And to do it I'll be using this drive shaft from a car. And first thing to do is connect this side to the engine. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think about this setup and if it will work. I'm pretty confident it will, but we'll see. So next part, we'll hook up the engine to the exhaust, cooling, wiring, all the difficult stuff, and basically just get the engine running, and then I can put in some quick steering, make a seat, hook up the throttle, and take this thing for a test drive, and basically a super small, overpowered jet boat. So that'll be fun. But that's all in the next video. For now, thanks for watching. See you then. Yes guys, what is up? Homemade Madness back again, and you're watching part 5 of my quest to build a fully homemade jet ski. So I already made the hull, top half and a custom jet drive, all using my self-made plans. And in part 4 I tore the engine out of this Kawasaki Superbike. It's a 1200cc 4-cylinder engine and should make around 180 horsepower. Then I mounted the engine in the hull on engine rubbers and connected it to the jet drive using a drive shaft and a drive belt. So in this episode I want to hook the engine up to everything it needs to run and then take it for a test drive. And because nothing about this engine was designed for use in a boat, it's actually way more complicated than it sounds. So I'll make a custom exhaust manifold, a water box, an exhaust tip, heat exchanger, another heat exchanger, a water cooling system for the exhaust, change the CV axle setup, make a metal frame to house the wiring, connect the wiring, hook up the cooling system, and finally hook up a quick temporary steering system, then put it in the water, take it for a test drive and see how it goes. Well, that's a lot of stuff for one video. Better get started. So, the exhaust. It might not be as simple as you might expect. This is the original one from the bike. It went on the cylinders, something like this, and then went under the engine to the rear of the bike. But I don't want it to run that way, I want it to run this way. So I'll make a new manifold from this 40mm tube and these bends. So I'll make the 4 pipes coming out here, down a bit, and then into one bigger pipe around here. So the header is pretty simple, but now it gets complicated because, as you might know, a boat or a jet ski normally has a water-cooled exhaust, and you know it because water is coming out of the exhaust port. So the reason why it's cooled by water is just because the exhaust will get really hot really quickly in here. So to solve it, they simply put water in the exhaust. So I'll just put 4 tubes spraying water into each exhaust pipe to cool it, and then the water will go in here, and in here I'll make what is called a water box. This box will collect the water and also silence the exhaust sound. And then from the water box, which I'll make from this stainless sheet, the water and exhaust gases will flow a bit up above the water line, then come down again and exit the hull here. So first, let's make the new header. Okay, so the exhaust manifold is done and I connected it to this 60mm tube out here. And next up is making the water lock. So I'll make 4 tubes to jet water into here. And then the water will come down here, go into the water box. And the water box or water lock is used just to collect the water and muffle the sound. So it goes in here. And there will be a layer of water in the water box. And then it goes up here above the water line. And outside on this side. If it doesn't make sense, just keep watching. And I hope it will at the end. So that's the exhaust all done. I'm still waiting for the hoses to attach this to this and this to here. And also I still need to add the water inlets here. But I'll do it later because first I'll focus on the cooling. So the cooling plan is this jet has an output over here which I still need to make with pressurized water from the outside. And I could just run it straight through the engine and cool it. But I won't do that because I don't want outside water in this engine, because it might damage it and it can't regulate the cooling anymore and it might run too cold. So what I'll do instead is keep the original cooling system of the engine with coolant in it and use the engine's pump to circulate it, and then make a heat exchanger from aluminum which will sit around here, and the outside water will then flow through the heat exchanger along with the coolant and cool the coolant, And this way the engine will work just like it did in the motorcycle, with its own thermostat, its own coolant pump, only not a radiator but a heat exchanger. Except I also need to cool the engine oil, and in the bike there was a small radiator to cool the oil. But what I'll do in a jet ski is make a second heat exchanger for the oil, so then the coolant will flow from this heat exchanger, cool down a bit, and then go to the second heat exchanger to cool the oil, but not too much, and then go back into the engine. So to make the heat exchanger, I have this aluminum tube and these tubes, and I'll put 4 of those in here and then make an adapter so the water can go from one outlet into 4, and then make a hole here and a hole here for the outside water to flow. And I'm using aluminum for this because it conducts heat way better than stainless steel. So that's the plan. Make one big heat exchanger for the coolant, make a smaller one for the engine oil. Outside water will flow through the coolant, out the exhaust. Coolant will flow from the engine. First heat exchanger, second heat exchanger, cool the oil, and then go back into the engine and cool the engine. That's the plan. Let's make it. Okay, so both heat exchangers are in place. It was quite a lot of work to make them. I made this one off camera, but it's just the same as this one, except it's for oil. So I stole these fittings off the bike's oil cooler, and I'll do all the plumbing and stuff later because I'm still waiting on some parts for that. And I'll also add the fill point at the highest point, so somewhere around here, along with the coolant tank, which will go somewhere around here. And I'll make a separate frame to house all this stuff coming from here to here. And then this metal frame can also house all the electronics needed for the ignition and stuff like that. So that's all for later. First I want to finish the exhaust by adding the water jet inlets in here. So I'll make this stainless tube going somewhere around here with 4 small tubes connecting it to each pipe. So yeah, let's make this first and then hook up the plumbing. And then I want to change this drive shaft angle a little bit by raising this up a little bit. And then once that's done, we'll wire up the engine with the electronics, put oil and coolant in it, and see if it runs.
Okay, so last shot you saw me put on the wiring harness.
Now I've been going at it with a pair of pliers and cutting off everything I don't need, which is all right here. Mainly lights, dashboard and stuff I just don't need to run the engine. So the wiring harness is now much simpler, and I've hooked it all up to the coils, to the ignition switch, battery, and then I quickly hooked up a gas tank. And that means, well, it's basically ready to run. So I'm not sure what it's gonna do, I hope it runs. There's no exhaust gasket in there, so it will make a lot of noise. And obviously it doesn't have an air filter on, so it won't run very good. And I can't run it very long because there's no cooling at the moment. I did fill it with oil, pretty important. And I connected up this oil cooler, which is also not working at the moment. But it should be fine for just a minute. So let's push the button and see what happens. Well, that runs. Doesn't run perfectly at the moment yet, but I'm pretty sure it will be fixed with the exhaust properly fitting and an air filter and maybe a carb clean. So next up I'll clean it all up a little bit and then plumb in some cooling lines. So we have engine cooling and exhaust cooling. Hook up a garden hose to the cooling system and then run it for a bit longer. Okay, so here we are again, a few weeks later. I've been busy with work and I've been on holiday. And as you can see, I've also painted everything. So I took everything apart, painted the hull, and then painted all the metal framing in here. Then put everything back together, connect all the hoses, and it's pretty much ready for a test drive. And I've also added this tube, which is the water pickup from the jet drive to cool the heat exchanger. And this is a bilge pump, just in case any water does get in. And this tube is the excess water which doesn't go into the exhaust and comes out of here, so you can see whether it's cooling or not. And just for the test drive, I've added this quick steering, which connects to this cable, which connects to the jet drive, so I can steer it. And this is my throttle. And this is my kill switch, stuff like that. So the plan is I can sit here and take it for a quick test drive. Not too fast, just first or second gear. See if it floats, see if it keeps cool. And to get it in the water I made a little trailer, because it's getting quite heavy now to lift. And I've also made a simple boat ramp, which you can see in the water, to get it in the water. I hope it works. And I've got a temperature gauge here to check the engine temperature. And if it keeps cool and keeps running good, well, we'll take it for a test drive. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Worked pretty good. No leaks. Temperature nice and perfect. The belt did skip teeth as I was trying to go any faster. So I think I'll upgrade the belt system. But for the rest of it, it works pretty good. It's nice and stable in the water. So this was only in third gear. So I'm really anxious to see what it can do in fifth or sixth gear. But I'll do it later. Next video, we'll mount the top half, make the seat, mount the steering, paint it, and then it's finished. So thanks for watching. See you then.